Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy lives to join us this evening. My name's Bridget Verco and I'm the Principal Business Resilience Advisor at Auckland Emergency Management. So Auckland Emergency Management is a part of Auckland Council, and we work in partnership with emergency services, community organisations and businesses to ensure Auckland is prepared for and able to respond and recover from emergencies. And a key part of our work is supporting small business owners like yourselves manage the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 and to get you on the road to recovery faster. So with that in mind, I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Tracy Hatton. Tracy is a Joint Managing Director at Resilient Organisations. She's spent the last 8 years working with the owners of small businesses like your own to make them better able to get through disruption. Much of her experience has come from working with small business owners following both the Christchurch and Kaikoura earthquakes. But before I hand over to Tracy, I just want to cover off a few quick housekeeping items. So there will be a question and answer session at the end. So please either raise your hand or feel free to ask a question by opening the Q&A window. If we don't get your answers, don't worry, we will follow up afterwards. And we will also be recording the session, but only the session, not the question and answers. And we'll be able to email that to you shortly. The recording of this presentation will also be available on our website, which is aucklandemergencymanagement.org.nz. So without further delay, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Tracy.
Thanks very much, Bridget. It's a great pleasure to have this opportunity to speak with you. Look, COVID is a disaster, and disasters create misery, disruption, they create winners or losers. And I wish this presentation was going to provide some magic fairy wands to wave over that. And unfortunately, it isn't. But we have learned a lot of things, both here in New Zealand, but also from international, about the things that do help businesses to get through disruptions and long-run disruptions such as this. So while the Canterbury earthquakes may be a very different kind of disaster, they also had a very long tail, the same as COVID is having on us. So we're going to take you through sort of 4 key areas in this short presentation, looking first of all at wellbeing, situational awareness, communications and working together. We hope that you do also please join us again on Monday, or of course a recording of Monday, where we look to adapting to the new reality that we are currently in and what might be coming at us over the next sort of short to mid-term future as well. So jumping right into it, although this presentation is about how do we help organisations, we have to start with helping people. You know, for a lot of small business owners, your business is like a baby. And for those of you who are parents, you'll be able to relate to the idea that you've got to take care of yourself before you can take care of your baby. So small business is a lonely place at the best of times, and even more so in the worst of times. And it can be very easy to hunker down, draw the drawbridges in tight, work all the hours under the sun to try and do what you can for your business. And along with that goes a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry. So one of the key things to start with is you've got to do the things that keep yourself well and healthy and keep your energy levels up. When we get into that sort of crisis fighting mode, there's a lot of studies out there that tell us it doesn't help us in terms of our cognitive function to be able to think about big picture, to be able to sort of step back and think broader, to innovate and to create. And those are some of the things that your businesses need to help them get through the impacts of COVID. So what you're seeing, of course, on the slide is some great advice from people far more qualified in this area than I, about where to try and focus your energies at the moment. And you've got the things that matter and the things that you can control. So at the moment, we know there is an awful lot that we cannot control. And that is really challenging for many of us. And of course, the things that matter. And if you can step back sometimes to think about the things that matter, whilst your business, of course, does, and it's very important, it's often not actually the top of the list. And we want to try and focus our energy on the intersection of those two. These are really worrying times, and another way of looking at taking care of our well-being is to try and limit the amount of time we spend in a really worried and a what if and anxious kind of state. So I call this the oh my gosh box. And it's human nature to naturally have our thoughts be going into the oh my gosh, and what am I going to do, and what's going to happen, how are we going to get through this. And I'm not suggesting you don't spend time in that sort of brain space. What I'm suggesting is that you try and start noticing when you're in it and put a time limit on how long. So let yourself be in the worry box, basically, but try and notice and try and say, okay, right, I'm only allowed to spend 10 minutes and then I'm going to go do something else. Another way to think about well-being, it's different for everybody what keeps us well and healthy. Mine's a gentle walk every day. Other people, it's some time in the garden. It can be whatever works for you. Think about the 5 ways to well-being: connecting with people, giving to people, taking notice of nature, taking notice of the birds chirping in the morning, keeping on learning, or being active. And you don't have to do all 5 of these, but if you're spending 70 hours a week working on your business, you need to cut down on that and try and spend some time in these spaces. It actually will be better for your business overall. So if you're taking time out to go and have a walk in nature, you've got to remind yourself that is to the benefit of your business, because it's to the benefit of how well you'll be able to think and process and make decisions. Okay. So where we're at the moment, we really need to be taking stock of our situation and thinking about, first of all, our cash flow. It can be, when times are hard and we know it's bad, it can be tempting to leave this box closed. It's way better for your business ultimately to make sure we keep that box open and that you are at least weekly looking at your current cash flow and your future forecast cash flow. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need accountants to do it necessarily. It is as simple as a spreadsheet or even a piece of paper to look at your income and your expenses, and to have a really realistic view of what is currently happening for your business. The second area to take stock of is your liquidity. So you've got one piece of the picture of the puzzle is your cash flow. The second piece is what resources, financial resources can you access, and that's your liquidity. And then importantly, you'll see these 3 circles. Your business has got a lot of other things that make it a success, and that make it valuable. So starting in that bottom left-hand corner, the human capital, the people, the processes, the structure. Good to just sort of take stock of what it is that you have got, because it helps you start to think about what might some of the options for using that human capital in a different way be. So we've talked about financial capital, and particularly cash flow and liquidity, but also you may have a lot of social capital, not just in your business, but in your whole life, your relationships, your networks, the people that you've helped in the past, the people that and businesses that you work with. And remember that they're actually assets for your business. Now, the reason that you need to basically take stock of where you're at is it enables you to make decisions. Following the Canterbury earthquakes, the businesses that did really well were those that did face the situation that they were in. And some of them took decisions that to close their business temporarily. So there was a cafe located in the city centre. They lost their premises. They felt that their cafe was had a loyal crowd of office workers. So they were very realistic that for them going and setting up a new premises somewhere else wouldn't necessarily be a successful solution. So they faced the situation head on. They closed the business. They went and took jobs, not particularly well-paying jobs, but they went and took jobs to get them through. They waited about 1.5 years until the right time came up and the right premises came up, and they reopened their business. Now, if they'd tried to reopen their business earlier in a different place and in a different location, they would have burned through all of their capital and wouldn't have been able and ready to take advantage of the opportunities when they came back again. Another business who made kitchens. Now, of course, after a massive earthquake, there's not much call for a new kitchen. Awful lot more call for demolition companies. Again, they were quite realistic. We're talking a month, 6 weeks, 2 months after the earthquakes, but they looked at what did the future hold for them over the next 12 months. And rather than continue as they were, where they would have burned through all of their assets and cash before the big surge in demand, they went, right, we need to effectively downsize. We need to try and keep as much of the assets of the business as we can. So in some cases that was staff who agreed to become very part-time for a period of time. They lost some staff, of course. That was unfortunately necessary. But they managed to sort of mothball enough that they still had the capital to be able to capitalize on the surge when it came. So taking stock of your situation enables you to make good decisions about what is right for your business now. And bear in mind that temporary closure isn't failure. It may be the most resilient decision to make in terms of preserving the capital within your business so that you can take advantage of future opportunities. Taking stock of your situation may cause you to think about pivoting your business. And in the second in the series of webinars, we're going to talk about a process that you could go through to think about whether that is necessary for you. There's some fantastic resources on the web to help you work through the cash flow side. So if that's not something that you've done a lot on before, there's a lot of free resources out there at the moment to help you, and you'll see a link at the bottom of this slide to some really good ones. When you are doing the stock take, just one caution: don't focus only on cash. Also remember all of those other assets that you and your business have, and think about how you might be able to capitalize upon those. I saw an awesome sign on my drive to work this morning. It was in a house of travel. We are here to stay, but we need some help with our rent and are looking to sublease part of our premises. So open, honest, not giving people the fear that they weren't going to be around. We are here to stay, but we need some help with our rent. Get in touch if you want to sublease from us. Cool. And so that brings us nicely onto our next subject, which is about communication. Critically important, often underestimated. We're probably perhaps very good at doing this in the early stages of a disaster, and then we start to tail off. And often we start to tail off just at the time where our customers or our staff are starting to go, I'm a bit worried. What's happening? What's going on? And that's just at this time in that really long haul of recovery that we need everybody to be working together and to be clear on what is going on. So communication, early and frequent, open and honest, empathetic and authentic. That's the really key rules. I know everybody has differing relationships with their staff, but the staff of your organisation are a huge resource. They have as much of a vested interest in your organisation continuing as you do, and communicating in that open and honest and authentic way with them. They may have some great ideas, and at the very least, no matter what happens, you will have been doing, shall we say, the right thing. Allowing for feedback. You know, not everybody thinks the same way. You may not like some of the feedback, but in some of that feedback may be some real gems that can actually help your organisation. No one brain can have all the great ideas, and a lot of brains together are much, much better at doing that. Keep communicating to your customers. There's a lot of community, out there in New Zealand, a lot of wanting to help people. On screen are a couple of what I've come across as really good communications. They're a little bit old now. They are going back to one of our lockdown times. But just keep communicating with your customers. Keep reminding them that you exist and that you'd love their custom. Whether you're services or retail or other kind of products, be grateful for every customer you get. Loyalty is really easy to lose, and really valuable in hard times to keep. We know that consumers and generally are going to be being choosy about where they spend their money if they've got less of it. And so good service and that sort of gratefulness for the custom may be the difference between your place keeping it and another place getting it. Okay, working together. These images are all examples from the Christchurch earthquake recovery of where businesses found that coming together to do things was effective. None of these necessarily directly fit the COVID situation, but what we've seen across many years and many different disaster recoveries is reaching out to other people. Firstly, has wellbeing benefits in terms of a problem shared. Secondly, is where great ideas to co-promote and do things together are generated. And most of these examples from Christchurch came from just ordinary business people. They were nothing special, who got together and shared their issues and their problems, and hatched solutions to help all of the businesses involved in those conversations. The sort of things that might be appropriate, obviously all of your contexts may be different, but combining publicity events, because publicity costs money and a lot of businesses aren't wanting to spend money at the moment. But when you pull together combined flyers or publicity about your local area, that can be very helpful. Even if you're just a little fish and chip shop, maybe the little fish and chip shop and the little Chinese shop can band together to get some menus and some good marketing delivered into people's letterboxes. Don't forget, you've got some great universities up in Auckland full of marketing students who are relatively cheap. So if marketing isn't your strong point, start to think creatively about how you might get some help on it without necessarily having to spend a lot of money. Support local business window shopping day, shop local and win. Personal shopper services, there are, depending on what stage of COVID alert we're at, a number of people in the world who don't want to be going out and having a lot of contact with people. Don't underestimate just simply sharing your questions and issues with other businesses and the power in that. And of course, we've got the ... because who knows what might come from businesses just talking with each other and thinking about what might we do to promote each other. Lastly for tonight, letting through uncertainty is tough, and that is why we started with looking after yourself. Here's some general rules to also follow. And just run through these quite quickly, which is start with compassion. So if we're communicating, we also need to be communicating with compassion. We've got stressed customers, we've got stretched customers, we've got stressed staff. And that overall we're in this together as a team of 5 million approach is helpful to try and carry on in the way that we interact with people. Be truthful, be honest if you don't know. Maybe you don't know what the future holds for your business. That's fine, don't try and pretend that you do. Keep people up to date. Communication is actually way more frequent, particularly with staff, than you probably think it needs to be. Don't be afraid to tell people what you need them to do for you. So that goes to suppliers, where you need to negotiate payment terms, your landlords, when you need to start to continue to talk about how you can work together to sustain your business. And listen to what people say to you, even if it's bad news. Again, it's all part of that situational awareness and that stock take. The bad news helps you to make good decisions rather than just to let things drift on to a point that are detrimental to you and your business. Seek out ideas from others, keep checking in with your team, and be kind to yourself. So while you're busy doing all that and looking after a whole bunch of other people, make sure you've got your support group to look after you to help get through. There's tons of fantastic information out there on the web. Just to highlight a few here, obviously the COVID-19 website is the best place for current advice around COVID and the hygiene measures that you may need to have in place. A couple of great websites on on wellbeing and a whole lot of specific tailored business support, including pick up the phone and talk to the business helpline. Even if you're not sure what they can do for you, just talk it through with them. ATEED as well, and the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, also great resources out there to help you.